I heard a pastor say this many years ago. He said, you need to stop counting your conversions and start counting your conversations. I think his point is this, that if we're getting into more and more meaningful spiritual conversations with people, we're going to see more and more people come to faith in Christ. I have a lot of pastors in my life that ask me, Gary, how can I help my church get into more meaningful spiritual conversation? How can I lead them into doing that? Well, the first thing is you got to own it as a leader. You need to own it as a leader. Ed Stetzer said, if you want your church to be evangelistic and you yourself are not evangelistic, you're on a fool's errand. If you're going to see the spiritual conversations in your church increase, you must see them increase in your life as a leader. So you got to own it. You got to own it as a leader. Let's face it, if reaching people who are far from Jesus is not at the front burner of your life, it's not even on the radar screen of your church. Every time I get frustrated with my lack of meaningful contact with people who are far from Jesus, I pray this simple prayer. Father in heaven, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my ineffectiveness, my insensitivity to the people you're bringing into my life. Help me today to get into a meaningful spiritual conversation with someone you love and you are drawing to yourself. You know, prayer is more about aligning our lives with God's purposes than it is to meet our own personal needs. Not all of us as pastoral leaders are gifted in evangelism, but I believe that all of us have to answer the charge that Paul gave Timothy when he said, do the work of an evangelist. No matter what your primary calling is or where your giftedness lies, whether it's to be a shepherd or it's to be a teacher or it's to be a leader of God's people, I believe Paul's pastoral charge applies to all of us. If you're a shepherd, you use your shepherding gift to guide your people into the work of evangelism. If you're a teacher, you need to use your teaching gift to inspire your people into God's mission. And if you're a leader, you need to use your leadership gifts to lead and organize your church into the greater harvest that surrounds your church. Today, I got two real quick takeaways. The first takeaway is this. You need to start praying. I want to encourage you to pray for the next 30 days. Pray this simple prayer. Lord, help me today to get in a meaningful spiritual conversation with someone you love and are drawing to yourself. I'm telling you, Pastor, if you pray that prayer every day for the next 30 days, you will see your spiritual conversations increase. It's amazing how God works. That sometimes is the quickest prayer that can ever be answered. I remember praying that prayer once, and this guy from work came, and I bowed my head. I prayed that prayer. I said, Lord, it's been a while since I've shared my faith with anybody at work here. And this guy walked over and stood in front of me. I had my little New Testament Bible in my hand, and he looked at me and he said, hey man, doesn't that book get old? And I said, no, man, it's fresher and newer every time I read it. You want to read it? And he grabbed my Bible out of my hand. And he started reading it. And that led to spiritual conversations and to the point that he came to faith in Christ and brought his family to our church, and they came to faith in Christ. And so sometimes, you can pray that prayer and a minute later, God answers it. So pastors, will you take that challenge, the 30-day challenge, to pray every day that simple prayer? Father, help me. Help me get into a meaningful spiritual conversation with someone today. And then the second takeaway is this. Find a coach. Find a coach that will help you become better at sharing your faith and getting into meaningful spiritual conversation with people. I do a lot of coaching with pastors, and I want to tell you, we typically would do like a 3-month coaching period, and I've seen pastors lead more people to Christ in those 3 months than the prior 3 years of their ministry. And so be intentional. We all need coaches to help us in different areas of life. And this could be an area in your life where a coach is going to stretch you and challenge you, prod you to become better at getting into more meaningful spiritual conversations. So if you're going to lead your church, you're going to see your church increase in spiritual conversations, it needs to start with you as a leader.
This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.